Thank you for joining us on this chat for Bias, looking at inequalities in women's health and research. And I'm delighted now to be joined by Susan Kelleher, who is got a very long title behind her name as well. So Susan, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much, Alison. My name is Susan and I am an assistant professor of polymer chemistry in Dublin City University. So in old money, I'm a lecturer that teaches chemistry to students.
Great.
I do.
And how did you get started in your career?
So being a chemist, I suppose there's lots of parts to my role. So I always wanted to teach. This was what I always wanted to do. Like ever since I was, in primary school, I really liked teaching. So I then was studying for the Leaving Cert, and I still had teaching down on my CAO. And I realised I really liked chemistry. I had kind of landed in chemistry by a bit of a happenstance as well, for a Leaving Cert subject. And I realised I really like it, and I'm, had a bit of a flair for it. It just came from nowhere. So I was talking to my mum about this. I was quite young. People making their Leaving Cert decisions. You have a big decision, or I certainly felt like it at the time. And my mum said, if you like the teaching, but you like chemistry, maybe could you do like science in college, and then you could go back and get additional training to do teaching. So that was the plan. So I ended up studying medicinal chemistry in Trinity College as my undergraduate. And when I was there, I kind of realised maybe I could teach students chemistry in this setting, in a university, and that would be another way to sort of tick the teaching box. And then that I could also kind of get involved in research in universities. So I realised that this job is a dream job for me. It ticks all my boxes, and if I could try and sort of chase that dream, I would. And I try to, and I managed to sort of get a position, very fortunately, that allows me to teach and do research in university in Ireland. So that's where I'm at.
Incredible. Yeah. That's incredible. You look like a student though, Susan. You don't look like a lecturer. But
I don't feel like it, Alison. That's very nice of you to say.
Along the path for you, were there a lot of women getting into chemistry and taking these courses? And do you have a lot of female students now? And I was just saying to Patricia McGuire, who's part of this Bias as well, is that I think visibility in women in these professions is key to getting younger women interested.
That's a great question, because I suppose I studied medicinal chemistry, and at the time it was quite a new course. I think I was the second cohort of people. It would have been starting in 2001. That'll tell you how old I am. But because it was new, we didn't know too much about it. So my mother, because I was only about 15 or 16, I was quite young, and my mum rang the university and got in touch with a lady called Isabella Rosas, who is a professor now in chemistry in Trinity. And she was really excited about the programme. She had come over from Spain to set up the programme. It was one of its first in Ireland. And my mum came back to me and was like, this lady's incredible. She's so excited about the programme. She said you should come. And I think that was like my first sort of like seeing a woman, because my teachers in school, I had a wonderful chemistry teacher who was female as well. But I think just that inspirational, like that, when I joined the course then, that character, like having somebody like that leading it and being, excited about it was a big thing. And I think there has, I don't know the stats on it now, but there seems to be a tendency that a lot of women quite like applied chemistry. So the medicinal chemistry, I think, appealed to quite a number of women as well. And so there was, good, I think maybe 50-50 men and women in my class in school, in university. And we do see that. We do see a high level of science graduates at undergraduate level across the sciences, chemistry and, physics and biology and all their kind of, branched off areas. But I definitely have friends that were, are now chemists, and friends that work in Pfizer, and friends that that are women. And I've certainly never had the experience where I haven't been able to find a woman in a role that I would be interested to find out more about, if you know what I mean.
That's fantastic. And that's wonderful to hear, because the whole point of this is we want to, have younger people see different women who've charted out their careers in various different areas of STEM, and that it's all possible. But I'm fascinated by, for you, I have to read this out. So nano and micro surface patterning in biomaterials. And I think I'm understanding this though, Susan. Look at the ability of these surfaces to influence cell behavior. So that's specifically your area, what you're looking at. And the thing I'm interested in is what's meant by point of care devices. That's what I would be fascinated to hear.
Like, so my work in the area of surface structures, if you think about like a bed of nails, that we would know of, but now try and make them really super tiny that you can't see them and you can't feel them, but they're there on the surface and you can see them under a microscope. But what happens then is when cells come in to touch those little tiny needles, different things can happen. So depending on the type of material, depending how stiff they are, their size, their shape, how pointy they are, human cells you can encourage growth. You can make stem cells turn into different types of cells, just based on the surface interaction. So how they feel on the surface when they're there. But then also what I do in my work, a lot of the work that we look at is bacterial cells. So if you could think about a bacteria like a balloon full of water, that then when it interfaces with the right structures and the right size of these structures, these spikes, that the balloon will pop. So it's a way of killing bacteria, but not needing antibiotics and not needing any drugs or chemical reagents. So we're looking at how do these things work? How do these surfaces work? How do we make the right kind of structure? Do they kill MRSA? Do they kill all kinds of bacteria? Where can we put these structures? Can we put them onto the handles of door handles in hospitals? Can we put them in the inside of your water bottle to try and stop bacteria from growing and bacteria from building up in those areas? So I'm interested in again, from my own background, I came from I came from organic chemistry. I came from synthetic, drug making and like I said, medicinal chemistry. My PhD was in organic chemistry. And then I met another lady, as happens, who I worked with in Germany. And I saw a talk that she gave in UCD when I was a PhD student there. And I came in quite late because I was late to getting to the room, and I sat at the back of the room. And it was a really full room. And I saw her talk, and she was looking at these cells on these kind of structured surfaces. And I'd never seen anything like it. And then as we were leaving, everyone was shuffling out. And I basically was like, I need to talk to this stuff is incredible. And I kind of nearly swam through the crowd as they were leaving. I got to meet her before someone else. And I just walked up to her and I said, this is incredible. Can I work with you? And I was looking for a postdoc at the time. I hadn't got my PhD yet, or I just finished my PhD. And she was just, again, really enthusiastic and really liked me. I don't know, it was just a clicking moment as well. So she said, yeah, come on over. So she worked in Germany. So I went to Germany for a bit, but it was again, a moment when I was just cells on surfaces and understanding how they feel, understanding how they move and why they move in the ways that they do. Just was I said, if I ever get the position, if I ever get into such a fortunate position to have my own research group, this is what I'm going to do. So that's kind of what I'm doing, which is what I like.
It sounds so fascinating. It sounds really, really fascinating. And Susan, the thing is that's come up time and time again through my conversations with people for bias is the fact that, and the theme for Science Week this year, which is infinite possibilities, is that people don't have a full grasp of the infinite possibilities. If you're going into STEM or into science, you're really charting out your own path if you've made that career choice, haven't you?
Yeah. I think, I would say that the lady who got the woman who got, I think, one of the top grades in my undergraduate class went on to be a pilot. Someone else a CEO in Pfizer. And another individual. I've decided for me, academia is what I'd like. But people go on to be patent lawyers. People go on to be, teachers. They with a highly specialized understanding of chemistry. People go on to work in publishing and writing, and because part of our job as well is writing articles and writing, patents and getting our information of our results from our science out there. So people also are involved on, if you have that kind of degree in an area of interest in science, helping people from the other side to kind of get those results out there and get those publications out there. Or even, a lot of the time what we try to do is get funding for our science. So, we've all these great ideas, but we need money in order to get people to come in and work on them and the ideas with us and some funding for equipment, etc. And so a lot of people also, after their degrees, go on to work with funding agencies or with policy making the agencies. So it's very broad, and I think what science gives you is for me, the this sense of, problem solving and working in a team and not just, not highly specialized, but very broad as well in terms of the learning that you can get from that kind of degree.
You answered the next question. Actually, it's so funny, Susan. Everyone I've spoken to for this panel is, I ask what sort of skills and attributes people should have if they want to go into the field, and everyone says problem solving and teamwork, which is incredible. So, as far as bias and looking at inequalities in women's health and research, would you obviously be quite passionate in falling into that category where we recognize that there are definitely deficiencies in women's health being looked at through the lens of scientists, and that it's important that more and more research is being done in this area?
Yeah, so I think one thing that's becoming quite prevalent in our research, which is really important, is the idea of looking at gender inequality in what we do. And sometimes there's very obvious, maybe you're looking at the menstrual cycle, or maybe you're looking at menopause, maybe that's your research and it's very strongly associated with women. But then what we, as scientists now, in kind of the last, I would say 8 to 10 years, maybe kind of 5 to 8 years, have been now asked to think about, well, what are you designing? If you're an engineer, are you designing something like, I have to think about my phone, which is way too big for my hand, and it sounds really silly, but thinking, asking scientists who may not see themselves as working in something that's related to women and women's health and, specifically for women, but to think about how might this actually affect women, and am I taking a lot of this stuff would be, say, in gathering data, right? Am I taking a very fair and biased approach to how I'm interviewing, or people that are on my panel? And for cell samples, am I taking samples from just men, just women? Thinking about making sure that you think about your research in a very rounded way. And I think even as a chemist, I'm forced to sit down and really think about that and turn that stone over and go how am I sure that there's no bias here that I'm missing when it comes to the product I want to develop or the solution I want to develop in terms of men and women and how they're going to interact with this.
That's really fascinating, and it's on all levels. You have to consider all of these things. What about anyone who's we're hoping that obviously lots of young women are watching this, maybe pre-university years, and what advice would you have for people who want to get into STEM and into science?
So, I would say, and I suppose this is what I do this a lot. I'm quite chatty, right? So what I do is I talk to people, and when I got to university and I said, okay, I think I might like to do this teaching at this level. The first thing I did was talk to people who do it. I talked to my lecturers, I talked to people who are in that sphere, and I said, how do I get into this? This is what I think it is. Can you tell me what it actually is? Because sometimes we have misconceptions about what a job might be, and you mightn't think it's for you, and then it is, and the other way around. So I think reach out to people. You'd be surprised how incredibly welcoming people are when you ask them about their job and why they chose certain routes. For me, because I was a child, I was into, creative, and I liked jigsaws and liked puzzles. I always had this sort of figuring out and asking why questions. And I would say definitely from a science perspective, I often think that the big question is why. I often use this analogy of, if something turns blue in a lab, a scientist would say, why did that turn blue?
Yeah.
Why did that happen? And I think maybe engineers or other people might say, well, can we make it bluer? Is blue good? Will people buy blue? Depending on your way of thinking, I think science is all about the why. Why did that happen? So if you find yourself asking questions around the world and trying to understand it, science could definitely be a route into, could be something that you would naturally fit into. And I think what I found is I generally, not that I went with the flow, but I definitely, it wasn't I found I had a flair for this thing, so I went that way. And I found I really liked that thing, and I wanted to know more about it, so I pursued it. So what I liked and what interested me and what I naturally just kind of was easy for me, I followed, and then it doesn't become a chore, then it's just you're enjoying your job and enjoying what you do. So
it's a genuine passion then. Yeah. And would you have moments, final question, would you have moments in your career that you'd be most proud of and go, this is the impact that STEM can do, this is the impact that women working in STEM can do? Yeah,
I think that's a great question. I have 2 children. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. I've been through mat leave. I've done the pandemic with tiny babies on my lap, so I think, and I think a lot of people feel this. I think, getting through those difficult early years with children and retaining a career was a big thing. I'm very proud of that. And I don't know, again, it's not necessarily specific to me in my career. I think a lot of people have faced difficult challenges like that. But for me personally, that was a big thing. And I moved university a couple of times. I was, I've moved jobs recently, I moved recently. I think for me, getting through that. And I think also, genuinely, another one was my first PhD students graduating was a really big thing, like standing with unbelievable pride that, and we had sort of done it together, because when you're starting off a research group, you're all of you are just figuring it out as you go. And, there's no, there's no Bible that you take down from the shelf that has all the answers. You're just figuring it all out. So I think for me, they were some big moments, I think, that I'm personally proud of.
Thank you, Susan Kelleher, so much for being part of this panel in BIAS, looking at inequalities in women's health and research, all for Science Week. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thanks, Alison. Take care.